My name is Michael Cole, and I used to think the worst thing about working nights was the silence. Not the kind of silence people look for when they're exhausted from kids, television, and neighbors with power drills. I mean something else. The kind of silence that settles into spaces that are too large after life has already left them. The kind where you can hear metal cooling, where the wiring inside the walls crackles, where the ventilation pushes air through empty corridors as if the building still needs to breathe. The kind of silence that slowly begins to sound like someone's patient inhale. I worked as a night security guard at Cedar Grove Mall, just outside Portland, Oregon. I was 29, former Army sergeant, Iraq, 2010, divorced. My daughter, 5 years old, lived with her mother. Insomnia, chronic fatigue, and that particular kind of guilt that has no shape because the memory behind it is broken. I remembered the ambush. I remembered the blinding light. I remembered voices shouting over the radio. I remembered that out of 4 people in the convoy, only I made it back to base. But the most important part, why it was me, never reached me. It was as if someone had burned that piece out from the inside and left behind only a warm emptiness. People like me are supposed to like night shifts. That's what people say. Former military, built for empty parking lots, patrol routes, surveillance cameras, and a heavy ring of keys. But that isn't true. Night work is only bearable as long as you believe everything around you is simply not alive. The moment you start to feel like the building is listening, you're never alone in it again. The mall was shutting down in a week. The land and the building had been bought by some Amazon subsidiary. Old stores were clearing out inventory. Tenants were taking down signs. The play area stood covered like bodies under sheets. Out of 14 guards, only 2 remained, me and Frank Turner. Frank had worked there for 30 years, Vietnam veteran, lean, tall, with a face that looked like it had been carved with a dull knife out of old wood. He smoked outside, even in the rain, wore the same faded jacket over his uniform, and almost never talked about his life. I knew only 2 things about him. His hands trembled when he drank coffee, and he never, ever went into the East Wing after 2:15 a.m. In my first, final week, he handed the shift over to me outside the security room on the first floor, next to the former sporting goods store. On the monitors, the cameras showed dark corridors, an empty food court, dead escalators, and a locked children's amusement area, closed for 5 years after some legal case. Reflections of blue indicators crawled across the glass of the security room. It was 1:55 a.m. Frank placed the keys and the patrol log on the table and didn't leave. That alone was strange. Usually he would mutter something like, "Stay alive," or "Don't fall asleep," and disappear. That night, he stood there, looking not at me, but at the monitors, where camera 12 showed the East Wing, the children's food court, with faded plastic trees and a small carousel shaped like a smiling caterpillar.
Listen carefully, Michael. I'm not going to repeat this.
I leaned back in the chair, half smiling without thinking. Is this some kind of initiation?
No, these are rules.
He raised a knotted finger.
First rule, during the quiet hour from 0215 to 4:48, you do not turn off the lights in the East Wing.
I frowned. Why?
Second rule, if the elevator goes to B, you do not look inside, even if you hear a familiar voice.
I was about to say something about old man superstition, but then I noticed he wasn't playing. He wasn't trying to mess with me. There was no mysticism in his eyes, only a tired, lived-in kind of fear.
And rule 3, do not call them by name. They have no names, only place, and that place is your back.
I looked at him, then at the evacuation plan on the wall. What's B? There's only parking and utility rooms down there. Frank slowly walked over to the building diagram, took it off the wall, and turned it around. On the back was an old technical plan, worn and faded, covered in pencil markings. I saw the parking level P, storage areas, ventilation shafts. No B.
There's a button in the elevator system, no label. In the logs, they always called it B, where the village stood before we came.
I frowned. What village? He looked at me as if checking whether I was mocking him.
The one they buried.
And then he left, leaving behind the smell of wet wool, cigarettes, and something else. Old dust or soil. I stayed alone and for a while just sat there, listening to the low hum of the monitors. Then I picked up the flashlight, the patrol log, and started my route. Movement was the one thing I trusted. As long as you walk, count doors, write down times, your mind stays occupied and doesn't invent anything extra. At night, the mall looked worse than it did during the day. In daylight, the emptiness was still masked by reflections in the glass, the noise of cleaning machines, and the occasional contractors moving through in uniform. At night, everything became honest. Mannequins stood behind glass like witnesses. The darkness of the escalators looked like frozen waterfalls. Plastic signs hanging from the ceiling felt like road signs in a dead city. By 2:15, I reached the east wing. It was lit, but unevenly. Old ceiling lights didn't fully work. Some sections flickered, some burned steady, some pulsed as if the voltage was drifting through the wiring. To the left was the former children's food court, with closed ice cream and pizza stands. To the right, the entrance to the play area. The smell of old plastic and cleaning chemicals hung so thick in the air it felt almost tangible. I walked along the wall and noticed a spot where the paint had swollen and bubbled. At first, I thought it was just dampness, but when I shined the light closer, I saw a dark line beneath the white paint, then another. Without thinking, I picked at the peeling edge with my fingernail. The layer of paint came off in a long strip. Underneath, there was a drawing, a spiral, rough, wide as if it had been scratched into the plaster many years ago. In the center, a human figure, upside down, arms stretched along the body. The legs seemed to press against the upper curve of the spiral, like against a ceiling. A cold shiver ran through me. There was something wrong about it. Not just a strange symbol, something deeper. A feeling that the figure wasn't standing on its head, but falling into the sky. I took out my phone and snapped a photo. The screen flickered briefly. The camera made its usual sound. I opened the gallery. Instead of the wall, there was a black image, completely black, as if the lens had been covered by a hand, and in the center, white words, "You are standing on us." I stared at the screen for about 10 seconds, not understanding what scared me more, the message or the fact that I wasn't reacting to it the way I should. Then, somewhere behind me, deep in the wing, something knocked. I turned sharply. No one. Only the children's carousel under a white cover and the food court tables. I turned off the screen, slipped it into my pocket, and walked back faster than my route required. In the security room, I opened the photo again. It hadn't changed. At 2:59, the elevator camera on the first floor flickered once and filled with static for a second. Then the doors opened. No one inside, but on the floor there was a circle of cornmeal, not scattered, not messy, laid out evenly, carefully, almost ritual-like. A thin line forming a perfect ring with an empty center, as if someone had stood inside it and stepped out just before the camera came back online. I stood up so abruptly that the chair rolled back into the wall. The radio hissed.
Michael.
His voice was shaking so badly I didn't recognize it at first.
Michael, did you touch the walls?
Frank, there's something in the elevator. Someone...
Did you touch the drawing?
He almost shouted it. I didn't answer right away, and that was enough. For a second, he said nothing, and in that silence, there was something worse than panic. Something like surrender.
Jesus, you touched it. Now they know your hand. They'll come for the hand. Don't sleep until morning, and for God's sake, don't look into the dark corners. They're not hiding there. They're there as you.
The connection dropped. I raised the radio closer. Frank?
In response, only faint noise. And then, from the speaker, came a quiet, rhythmic sound. Not heels, not drops. A soft, dry, rhythmic tapping, like someone in light shoes walking slowly across concrete, knowing they would be heard anyway. I turned the radio off. It got worse immediately. I didn't leave the security room for the rest of the quiet hour. I watched the monitors, drank awful vending machine coffee, and kept telling myself this was some kind of stupid game. An old guard, a closing building, an exhausted brain, a night shift. Any psychologist would look at that combination and say, "Congratulations, you're in perfect conditions for sensory distortion." But at 04:11, the camera in the corridor outside my door showed a person. He stood directly in front of the glass of the security room, even though from where I sat at the desk, the hallway was empty. On the monitor, he was there. In reality, no one. A tall, dark figure. No face. Not blurred, not digital noise, just an absence of features, as if someone had cut a human silhouette out of the night. I blinked. The monitor blinked with me. The figure disappeared. When the clock hit 04:88, I felt relief for exactly one breath. I even laughed, short, hollow, the way people laugh after very bad news they don't yet understand. Then, I went into the archives. Every shift had a digital log, patrols, notes, technical reports, terminations. I started searching past incidents, disappearances, injuries, the elevator, the East Wing. 20 minutes in, my fingers were cold even though the room was warm. 30 years of records, dozens of entries about night guards who had suddenly quit. Almost always, the resignation date was listed as the day before they disappeared. Officially, they left on their own. In reality, they never showed up again. The archives had been cleaned, but not perfectly. Old PDFs, scans, handwritten notes, internal emails. I found more than 40 names. Among the service files was Frank's personal folder, password protected. It didn't take me right away. It took 40 minutes and guesses using his birth date, his badge number, even the model of the rifle he had once mentioned. The password turned out to be simple: Silent Hour 94. Inside was a single text file. September 17th, 1994. I went down to B. I saw them. They have no faces, because we took from them not only their land, but the way they see the world. They are not angry. They just want us to feel what their children felt: cold, hunger, loneliness. And I agreed. Now it's my turn, every night, to go down and sit with them, during the quiet hour. 30 years left. Then, the next one comes. I read it 3 times. The clock showed 4:48. Behind me, someone whispered something in a language I didn't know. I didn't hear the words as sound. I understood them instantly, as if the meaning had been pressed under my skin.
You touched it. Now you are our quiet hour.
I turned so sharply I hit my knee against the desk. No one was there. The next day, I tried to quit. The head of security was named Rita. Tall, sharp, the kind of woman who always has the right document within reach and an extra layer of distrust for everyone around her. She sat in a temporary office, half-packed with boxes, signing equipment transfer forms. "I have family issues." She didn't even look up.
A week, Cole. Work one more week, you get your final pay.
"I'm not staying there another week.
Then you don't get it.
There's something wrong with the building." That made her look at me.
In what sense?
I knew how it would sound before I even started speaking, and because of that, I hated myself for every word that followed. The elevator, the cameras, old records, Frank's talking some kind of nonsense about a quiet hour. I found
Frank has worked here longer than you've lived away from your parents. He's a superstitious old man. You're not the first ex-military guy the night shift starts to eat alive. Work the week, take your money, move on.
And if I don't show up?
Then I mark it as a no-show.
that was it. No ghosts, no history, just corporate reality where even the oldest kind of horror still has to be approved by HR. I left her office angry and sick with exhaustion. When you haven't slept properly for months, anger becomes the only fuel that still moves anything inside you. Instead of going home and collapsing into bed, I drove to the county library, not because Frank believed her, because when your mind starts to leak, the best thing you can give it is hard facts. The reading room smelled like paper and heating vents. Outside, Oregon rain drifted down, the kind that doesn't look serious but soaks through anyway. I requested local archives on the land the mall stood on, and it was the first time in my life I heard the name Kalapuya. The Kalapuya were the native people of the Willamette Valley, several scattered groups, villages, seasonal movements, a language nearly erased by colonization before I was even born. In the mid-19th century, they were pushed out, relocated, starved, taken by disease, and forced into agreements where consent only meant you had already lost the right to refuse. I went through microfilm, newspaper clippings, copies of academic articles, and I found something that shouldn't exist in any respectable version of the city's history. 1855. A volunteer militia under Captain William Trent. An incident in a Kalapuya settlement. In one document, pacification. In another, conflict. In a private letter from a priest, massacre. 127 dead. Women, elders, children. Bodies thrown into a pit. A year later, Trent built a warehouse on that site. Another year later, Trent was found dead, sitting in a chair, facing a wall. The medical report listed starvation. There was food in the house. The warehouse stood for more than a century. In 1978, Cedar Grove Mall was built on its place. The first mall director disappeared on opening night, then another, then a janitor, then guards. 43 disappearances over the lifetime of the building, officially unrelated. I was about to leave when the librarian, an elderly woman with glasses on a chain, brought me a box requested from a university archive. Inside was a copy of William Trent's journal. The last entry was written in a trembling hand. They didn't die, they went into the ground, and now the ground breathes. It chooses one of us each generation to remember. The killer does not choose the victim chooses the killer, so he never forgets what he did. I am their quiet hour now. I hear them all the time. They speak in the language of the wind. They say, "You stand on our children. Your children will stand on our bones." I sat there holding the copy, feeling something inside me slowly, silently turning over. Not because of ghosts, because of logic. If a place can remember, it doesn't remember in words, not an accusation. It remembers through the body, through cold, through emptiness, through repetition. In Iraq, I had seen explosions cut into the ground and leave something behind. Roads looked normal again after a while, but you still knew something had happened there. Something had torn people apart. And even if you don't believe in anything supernatural, there are places in the world that feel permanently tilted toward violence. By evening, I called my ex-wife Emma just to hear my daughter's voice. Lily told me about a drawing she made in class, about a green horse she colored purple because it looked better that way. I listened, and the sound of her voice ached in my chest like an old bruise. I didn't tell Emma anything, not about the message, not about the elevator, not about the library. If you come back from war already not quite the same person who left, people stop believing your strange versions of reality, and they're right to. The second night was worse already, simply because I knew the time. When the clock in the security room showed 0214, my palms were sweating. There were no sounds yet, nothing had happened, but anticipation is always worse than the event itself. At 0215, the lights in the east wing flickered and suddenly became brighter than anywhere else in the building. Not just turning on, it was as if someone had added an extra degree of whiteness to them. On the monitors, everything there looked overexposed like an operating room. I stepped out into the corridor. Frank was nowhere to be found, even though according to the log he should have been on an external patrol in the parking lot. The glass storefronts on both sides of the hallway reflected me, the ceiling lights, trash bins, darkness, and something else. In one reflection, behind me, there were people. 3 figures, thin as poles, in rags or tall grass, I couldn't tell. No faces, just empty ovals where skin should have been. I turned sharply. No one. I looked back at the glass. Empty. I kept walking. A few minutes later, my phone rang. Lily. I answered immediately.
Dad?
Her voice was sleepy, small, warm, real. Yeah, sweetheart. Why are you awake?
There's a girl here.
I stopped. What girl?
I don't know. She's standing by the closet.
My heart hit so hard I almost doubled over. Lily, get Mom. Right now.
She doesn't speak English.
My daughter continued, as if she hadn't heard me.
But I understood her. She said you promised to play with her. She said the ground wants you to give back what you took.
Lily, I almost shouted, give the phone to Mom. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then I heard Emma's distant voice, some movement, and she took the phone.
Michael, why are you yelling? Lily came into our room, she had a bad dream. Calm down. She said she dreamed about some girl. That's it. Don't call in the middle of the night if you're spiraling again.
The line went dead. I stood in the half-lit corridor staring at my own reflection in the jewelry store glass. Behind me, in the reflection, someone appeared again. This time, only one. Small. A child. I didn't turn around, not because I was brave, but because I understood if I saw it not in the glass, but directly, something inside me would finally give in. When I returned to the security room, there were footprints on the floor, bare, dirty impressions. They led from the door to the center of the room, then turned and went back out into the corridor toward the elevator. The footprints were wet, but the water in them didn't smell like water. It smelled like river silt, raw bark, and old earth. I stared at them and knew I still had a choice to do nothing. Lock myself in, wait it out until 0448, leave in the morning, lose the paycheck, walk away, blame it on a breakdown, on insomnia. but there is a point after which ignorance stops being protection and becomes complicity. I picked up the radio and the flashlight and walked toward the elevator. The doors were already open. There was no circle of cornmeal inside like the night before, only the damp imprint of bare feet on the metal floor and the control panel. Between P and 1, a small blank indicator glowed. No letter, no number, just a dim square. I pressed it. The doors closed softly, almost politely. The elevator began to move.
Usually, even a long descent is something your body feels. The pressure shifts, your ears pop, the motor pulls the cabin through a familiar geometry. None of that was there, only the sensation that we weren't moving down, but sliding sideways, like a boat pushing off from the shore at night. I watched the timer on my phone. 10 seconds, 20, 40, 60. At 90 seconds, the doors opened. In front of me was a forest, a real forest, wet, alive, black trunks, the smell of rain and soaked pine, uneven, dense ground. The air was colder than inside the building and thicker, as if it hadn't been touched by engines or filters in a long time. Behind me there was no shaft, only the black rectangle of the doorway, and behind it the elevator cabin, absurd, like an office object abandoned in the middle of the 19th century. Rain struck the leaves in my shoulders. Somewhere far away, a child was crying. I stepped out. Mud sucked under my boots. The darkness in the forest had a quality you never find near cities, not just black, but something alive and damp, inside which shapes seemed to move slowly. I walked toward the sound of crying, then toward another sound, low voices speaking in a language I didn't know, not threatening, rhythmic, like a prayer or an attempt to keep from falling apart. A minute later, the trees opened. People stood in a clearing, women, children, a few elders, on their knees, bound or simply too exhausted to run. Their clothes were soaked and clung to their bodies. Hair hung in dark strands. Their faces were alive, real, frightened to the point where fear no longer screams.
Across from them stood men with rifles. A man in a long coat and hat stood slightly ahead of the others. I recognized him immediately, even though I had never seen him in person before. Trent, or whatever the memory of the place had made of Trent. I walked forward, already knowing I was 170 years too late. One of the soldiers turned toward me. It was Frank. Young, no wrinkles, no gray hair, no tremor in his hands. But it was him. The same bone structure, the same eyes, only not yet faded.
You shouldn't have come down, Michael.
His voice was his, but deeper, as if it came up from a well. What is this? I forced out.
Memory.
This can't be real.
It already happened. Now it repeats.
I stepped toward him, grabbed his sleeve, and my hand went through him as if through cold smoke. A shock of freezing pain shot up to my shoulder. "Stop it!" I shouted. Frank looked at me with a kind of pity that made me feel sick.
We can't stop it. We're the watchmen. We watch. We remember for those who forgot.
A child's scream carried from the clearing. Then a gunshot. I flinched as if it had hit me. Then another, and another. The world split into sound and mud, into falling bodies, into screams, into children who didn't have time to understand why the adults suddenly turned into blood, into women covering their heads with their hands, into an old man who tried to rise and fell face first into the ground, into the sharp smell of gunpowder mixing with rain. I ran forward, trying to pull someone away, shield them, grab a weapon.
but every time I passed through people as if through imprints on water. I couldn't change anything. I wasn't even a witness. I was a function of memory. When the gunfire stopped, only the rain remained in the clearing. Then, a girl stepped out of the forest, about 8 years old, in a wet dress clinging to her thin knees, black hair stuck in strands to her cheeks. Where her mouth should have been, there was a rough scar, as if the skin had once been pulled together and fused. But when she spoke, the voice sounded directly inside my head.
You didn't kill us,
I couldn't answer, my throat locked.
but you stand on our land.
She stepped closer. In her hand, I saw a ceramic shard with the same symbol, the spiral and the upside-down figure.
You eat in our food court. Your daughter plays in our play area. Every time you turn on the lights in the East Wing, you say there's no one here. But we are here, always, and we're tired of being invisible.
I didn't know. It sounded pathetic, almost insulting. The girl tilted her head slightly.
That's why you're here.
She held the shard out to me. When I took it, the skin in my palm burned with cold.
This symbol means the inverted world. You turned our lives upside down. Now we will turn yours. You will become our voice. Every night, you will come down here and watch and tell those above. If you refuse, we will come up ourselves, and then the quiet hour will be the only time you have left.
Why me? This time she looked not at me, but somewhere over my shoulder.
Because you already carry someone else's death and don't know its name.
Behind me in the forest, I heard a sound I knew, a distant explosion, a voice shouting over a radio, metal scraping, a rack, convoy, ambush. For a second, the road flashed before my eyes, white heat, an overturned vehicle, my own breathing in the dust. Someone's hand I couldn't hold on to, someone's voice begging not to be left behind. Then everything vanished, as if I had only been shown that my memory held a burial of its own. The girl pressed 2 fingers to my neck, just below the base of my skull, and the world disappeared. I woke up in the elevator. The doors were opening on the first floor of Cedar Grove Mall. The light was normal, warm, dull, electric. The clock on my phone read 04:48. I stepped out like I was learning how to walk again. The security room was empty. My patrol log lay on the table. On the floor, a dried streak of mud from a boot, my own. Nothing else. I didn't find Frank that night or the next morning. His shift was logged as completed. His badge registered an exit at 05:02, but the exterior cameras showed nothing. In the morning, I wrote my resignation. By hand, no explanation. Rita didn't even try to stop me. She just pressed her lips together, looking at my handwriting.
You should have done it right away instead of putting on a show.
I took my car keys and drove to Emma's place. She opened the door in a robe, her eyes swollen from lack of sleep, with that expression ex-wives don't get immediately, but after years of disappointment, when any surprise from you is no longer anxiety, just exhaustion.
What happened?
I'm taking Lily for a couple of days. Now.
Why all of a sudden?
Emma, please. Something in my face must have said more than I could have put into words. She stepped aside, woke our daughter, packed her things, and handed her over without an argument. That scared me more than if she had yelled. Lily curled up in the back seat, half asleep, holding her stuffed rabbit. We left the city before noon. I didn't tell anyone where we were going. I just drove south, then east, then south again. Anything to get farther away. We stopped at a motel that night. 2 days later, I rented a temporary place. Within a week, we were in Florida. People think distance helps. Sometimes it does, but only against things that belong to geography, not against what now lives inside you. The first sign came on the road. Lily sat in the back seat, drawing with markers.
Dad, why do you have a drawing on your back?
I looked into the mirror. What drawing?
Right here.
She pointed to the base of her own neck. We pulled over at a gas station. I went into the restroom, turned my back to the mirror, and pulled down the collar of my shirt. Just above the neckline, in a place I wouldn't have been able to see without a mirror, there was a mark on my skin, a spiral, and in the center, a tiny upside-down human figure. It didn't feel like a fresh tattoo, not in the way ink feels. It didn't hurt. It just felt like something that had always been under the skin and had only now surfaced. I moved again, changed my number, found a job as a night watchman in a small school on the edge of a Florida town. I thought that if I avoided malls, avoided land with a known history, avoided Oregon, chose a different coast, a different climate, a different air, maybe it would dissolve. During the day, I almost believed it. During the day, everything can be explained by nerves. But at night, the body remembers faster than the mind. On my first shift, the school almost felt comfortable. One building, a parking lot, a gym, quiet classrooms, boards covered with children's drawings. Not the same scale, not the same emptiness, not that dead shine of a shopping mall. There wasn't even an elevator. I made my rounds, listened to the air conditioners, tried not to look at the time. At 02:15, the light in the far corridor flickered, just once. I froze. Then I heard the sound. A soft, rhythmic tapping on linoleum, like moccasins on concrete, only now on a school floor, among paper snowflakes on the walls and alphabet letters above classroom doors. I walked toward the sound. One of the classroom doors was slightly open. Inside, it was dark, even though I clearly remembered leaving the hallway lights on. The beam of my flashlight fell across the board. Written on it in white chalk, "We are everywhere. You wear us now. Silent hour begins." I didn't notice right away that I was holding my left hand like it hurt. I lowered my gaze. The spiral on my skin had climbed above my elbow. It no longer looked like a drawing. It looked like something growing, slowly, using my veins like roots. In that moment, I understood the most important thing. They didn't want to kill me. Death would have been release, not memory. They chose me because I know how to stand watch, because I had already lived among other people's disasters and called it duty, because in war, in marriage, in fatherhood, and inside my own head, I had spent too long being the kind of person who arrives after something happens and records the aftermath without fixing anything. Now my role was different: to watch, to remember, to speak, and to stop the world from pretending again that there is nothing beneath its floors. Since then, I don't sleep during the quiet hour, no matter where I am, no matter what building I work in. Sometimes it's just the knocking, sometimes words on fogged glass, sometimes the smell of wet earth in places that should only smell like bleach and plastic. Sometimes I hear children's voices in empty corridors. Sometimes I see, in reflections, those who stand behind me and wait patiently for the moment I finally stop looking away. The most terrifying thing is not that they are everywhere. The most terrifying thing is that they are right. We build stores, schools, parking lots, houses, warehouses, food courts, play areas. We pour memory into concrete, repaint the walls, replace the signs, lease the space, install cameras and security, and call it development, as if a place is an empty surface, not someone else's throat where boots once stood. For a long time, I wondered why they called it the quiet hour. Now, I think I understand. Silence is not the absence of sound. It's the moment when no one above speaks for you anymore. And if you've ever heard the ground remember, you only have two choices left: become another person who walks past, or become someone who refuses to let it be forgotten. My name is Michael Cole. I was a guard. Now, I think I'm just standing watch over memory. And if one night, in an empty building, you see an elevator open on the wrong floor, don't look inside, even if it calls you by name, even if it calls you by name, because they don't have names, only place. And that place is already you.